In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam. In view of the current uproar that Salman Rushdie's book, Satanic Verses, has caused here and everywhere, we are bringing the following special program. Opinions expressed in this program are the individuals. The Islamic Information Service is merely presenting them without endorsement. The book has angered the entire Muslim community worldwide. The Muslims in this country are faced with two issues. The first issue is that of the First Amendment, the right of free speech. Does it mean that under the guise of free speech, one can violate anyone's religious sensitivity? Or is there a way to preempt this from happening? Whether it is a movie like The Last Temptation of Christ or the book Satanic Verses. Secondly, when this type of situation occurs, how should Muslims respond in a cohesive manner? Joining us in the studio are Dr. Maher Hattout and Dr. Fatih Osman, two Muslim activists, as well as Dr. Nazir Khaja, President of the Islamic Information Service.
While the response to the book Satanic Verses has been uniform as far as the condemnation it deserves regarding the content of the book, the responses have been very varied. I wonder if any of you will have any comments as to what should be the appropriate response to the book Satanic Verses.
I think there is a reflex feeling, I would say, that all of us share. That when someone insults you, you feel insulted, you get angry, you express this anger. And this book, in my judgment, is very insulting and is very demeaning and is a very lousy book. And so I expect Muslims to be upset. I find it very strange that people look at that as if Muslims are emotional or just very expressive of their anger, etc., which I think is not true. I think people are insulted, people are expressing their anger. And the same thing happened with the Last Temptation of Christ, and the notion that but this was a peaceful protest is not true, because in France it was not that peaceful. They bombed theaters and they burned movie theaters, etc. So the reaction of anger is legitimate and is expected. I just would hate, absolutely hate, to see any bloodshed over that matter.
While there have been books for the last 1400 years that have been written against Islam or in some way casting slur on the Prophet or the ideology of Islam, they really haven't generated that much of heat. But it seems that the book now, at the present time, is generating so much of furor. And I wonder if there is any reason for it. Is the climate or is the environment such that we are seeing Muslims in a very sensitized stage? Or do you have any comments?
I think there is a psychological explanation for this. When the Muslims felt that they had power and they are in the center of power, they tolerated a lot. And we had in the heritage a lot of books and writings and poetry made by distinguished people in the Islamic civilization, whether they are poets or philosophers or something, and they proved through their literature that they do not believe in Islam. More than this, they are aggressive, they attacked, and all these books were reported to us, and we had it in our heritage until now. I can mention many poets, many philosophers, many writers. The point that the Muslims in that time believed that they are strong, and they should, and they can, and should in the same time, carry out the teachings of the religion in being tolerant and in listening to any accusation and just responding to it, but not touching the person who is saying it, respecting his freedom of expressing himself, and then refuting what he has said. And this is emphasized in the Quran. The Quran is reporting all the arguments of the non-believers about God, about Muhammad, about the Muslims in their behavior, and it responded to it. And that the West, whenever it finds something, it tries to use the media and everything to attack Islam or to speak in unfavorable way about Islam. They may be mistaken. Some people may just looking for the news and making this news reported to the readership as journalism or as media is supposed to be. But the Muslims are very sensitive about this. And when they find that anything dealing with anti-Semitism, for example, can be protested against and anybody can say what he likes to say, and with regard to Islam, they feel that they should say, sometimes it goes out of proportion because these masses may include some people who are illiterate, who are ignorant, the flock-minded, all these things.
It seems to me that there is some opinion that if this book had gone unnoticed, if Muslims had really not made so much fuss over it, quotes and quotes, there wouldn't have been this much of drama that is unfolding now. Do you agree? Which means that we shouldn't have responded in any way.
You read the book, and
yes.
I read it, and it is really way, as a literature, it is way below average, even below the standard of that writer himself. I think it is a very poor book, and it is not readable. It is not a substance for success.
Yeah, no,
and I am sure that the controversy, whether it is justified or not, but the controversy did help the distribution, and did help the author, and did help the publisher, and that's very unfortunate. The same thing happened to The Last Temptation of Christ. You know that the producer is nominated for the Oscar. I don't know whether he got it or not, but he was nominated at least. And somehow...
But not for that work, though, for some other work. Martin
is it?
Scorsese,
Yeah,
yes.
I
Yes.
didn't know. But anyways, the book got publicity which much higher than its caliber as a book. And so I think that have this book been put on the shelves and without the controversy raised around it, it would have died. And this would have been probably a lesson to the publisher that if you want to publish something that deserves some respect.
Well, really speaking, I agree. The piece, the book is a piece of literary trash. Although I'm not a literary critic, but if one understands and examines the background of the author, he left India at a very early age, at the age of 11 or so, to go to England, and then he allegedly went through studies in England and read or studied Islamic history. Now, an 11-year-old kid who grows up with Western values and begins to write and writes about reincarnation and migration, which are the themes in this book, with some knowledge of Islamic history, which is such a perverted rendition of Islamic history. All of this has combined to create this book, which really, if read by anyone who understands English and anyone who understands the background of an Indian Muslim kid who's growing up and then being transplanted in England, then they would be able to understand the psychological framework within which he has written. So that's what it would have amounted to, except for all of this publicity that he has undeservedly gotten.
Of course, and one of the problems, of course, of this book is that it is fiction, and this is emphasized by the author, and it is clear from reading the book. So when you want to trace the author, looking for evidence and research and so on, he tells you that it is evidence. While in all his interviews, it slipped from him, it escaped from his mouth from time to time that any view about Islamic history or about Islam, about anything, should not be censored because it is different from the people who have the faith. So while he wants really to attack Islam, instead of attacking it through historical evidence, philosophical evidence with proofs and argument and so on, he tries to use this form of fiction to escape and to do all the insults in the name of that he is doing fiction. And I think the author, as you said about his style and so on, he is looking for reputation, for fame. For example, before he had a book about Nicaragua, and but it was dealing with facts. Either he is right or wrong. And he was caught by many people that he is just using the Marxist arguments, the Marxist ideas, and so on. And he spoke in that book that the West should have this conflict with Nicaragua because Nicaragua represents a socialist ideology and it will be different from the capitalist interests and so on. And he was caught by many critics, and it was easy in that time. But now, when he is caught, if you say that it is slander or libel or something, he's saying that it is a fiction. I am not talking about history. I am not talking about facts. While in all his interviews, he is defending himself that if he has a different point of view, he has to secure the freedom of speech. And the freedom of speech implies that the people who do not like the book should use their freedom of speech to say, we do not like the book, we protest in a peaceful way, in an acceptable way. They are expressing their grievances as American citizens or as British citizens or as anyone. What happened in Pakistan or in Iran or something through a demonstration and these problems of flock-mindedness and all these things, it might be something that, of course, we do not defend. It is an acceleration. But the main thing is that the Muslim readership and the Muslim masses have the right to say, we do not like the book.